All right, let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're tackling a question that's been around probably as long as humans have. Do we actually have free will? Or is everything already decided, preordained? I'm so glad you're here to help break this down because, honestly, this stuff makes my head spin sometimes.
It's a big one for sure. This whole free will versus determinism debate has huge implications, how we understand ourselves, our actions, even society as a whole. We'll be looking at philosophy, a bit of neuroscience, the whole works.
Okay, cool. In the stuff we've been looking at, there's this idea of free will, right? It's that power to make our own choices. Like small stuff. Do I hit snooze? Coffee or tea? It feels basic, but it's those choices define us.
Yeah. And a big name in free will is Jean-Paul Sartre. You might have heard his famous quote, "Man is condemned to be free." Heavy stuff, right? He's saying we're burdened with making choices, no excuses.
No pressure or anything. But reading through all this, it's clear Sartre's not the only voice in the whole debate.
You got it. That's where determinism enters the picture. This idea says everything, even our choices, are just a result of stuff that happened before, like a chain reaction going all the way back to the beginning of everything. Baron Dolbach, he was all about determinism, believed we're basically puppets following a script we didn't write.
Okay, so Sartre says we're totally free. Dolbach says no way, we're puppets. But where does science fit in with all the brain stuff we know now?
Neuroscience is where it gets wild. Back in the 80s, Benjamin Libet did this experiment, and it seemed to show that our brains make decisions before we're even aware of them.
Hold up. So my brain's deciding things and I'm just like, along for the ride. Freaky. Does that mean we're not responsible for anything?
It's a huge question. If our conscious choices are just an afterthought, does that change how we think about guilt, praise, our whole justice system? It gets real deep, real fast.
Yeah, imagine someone commits a crime, but their brain already decided it. Does that change how we punish them? It makes you rethink everything.
No doubt, it throws a wrench in our ideas about responsibility. But before we go too deep there, let's look at something called compatibilism. It tries to bridge this free will determinism divide.
Compatibilism. So it's saying both free will and determinism can be true at the same time? Like, how does that even work?
Exactly. Philosopher Daniel Dennett, he argues that, yeah, our choices are influenced by tons of stuff, our past, biology, all that. But within those limits, we still have some wiggle room, like we're still making choices.
My past shapes what I want, but I'm still the one picking, even if those wants aren't totally from me.
Nailed it. Think of it like planning a vacation. Determinism says your choice is influenced by your past trips, your budget, your work. But compatibilism says, within those limits, you're still weighing things, picking what matters to you. You're still you.
Okay. Free will, but with some pre-existing conditions.
Exactly. It's messy, but it captures how complex decisions really are.
Makes more sense. But going through what you sent, there's this thing about quantum physics. It might be connected to free will.
Now we're getting into the really weird stuff. Compatibilism tries to make peace between these ideas. But some people say it ignores how random the universe is, especially on a really small scale.
Quantum physics, man, it's always been a head-scratcher for me. Break it down.
At its heart, quantum mechanics has this thing called indeterminacy. It means tiny particles don't follow predictable paths. They're in multiple states at once until you observe them, and that makes things random.
Okay, stay with me here. Are we saying this randomness, like way down at the tiny particle level, could be connected to our minds? To how we make choices?
Some physicists and philosophers are thinking about that, yeah. Maybe our minds work on that quantum level, and that's where free will pops up.
Oh, that's some next level stuff. But
Yeah.
Is there any evidence, or is it just a cool idea?
Honestly, jury's still out. We don't have the tools to prove if our minds follow those quantum rules. Even Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, he said, nobody understands quantum mechanics.
So even the geniuses are stumped, huh? Okay, so it's a mystery for now. But it does suggest maybe the universe isn't as predictable as we thought, right?
100%. It challenges that whole clockwork universe idea where everything's set in stone, opens up some wild possibilities.
Okay, we went from philosophy to brains to the quantum realm. I need a breather. But before we do, there's something our listeners pointed out, like, even if free will is an illusion, why does it feel so real? Why do we feel like we're making choices?
That's the thing, right? Psychologists have been looking into this forever. Some say this feeling of being in control, whether it's real or not, might help us survive.
If we think we're in control, we're more likely to do things, get things done, adapt. Maybe it's a built-in survival thing.
And there's research showing people who think they control their lives tend to be happier, healthier, more successful even. This feeling, even if it's fake, it works.
So maybe free will is like a necessary story we tell ourselves. We need to believe it even if it's not totally true.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Maybe experiencing choice, regardless of how it happens, is just essential to being human, to being happy and doing well.
Wow, that is deep. But here's another thought, and this is a big one. Even if we accept that, does it really matter if free will's real or not? Practically speaking, we still gotta make choices every day, right? Life goes on.
You've hit a crucial point. Peter Strawson, a big-time philosopher, argued that even if everything is predetermined, we still need to hold each other accountable. It's how society works.
Our laws, morals, relationships, all of it assumes people can make choices.
Exactly. We need that idea of responsibility. Keeps order, builds trust, even if those choices aren't as free as we think.
So are we all just pretending about free will because we need it to function?
Maybe.
Or
The experience of choosing, even if you don't fully understand how it works, it's valuable. Shapes how we see ourselves, connect with others, everything.
wow, this went from a head scratcher to like a total rethinking of how I see everything.
Yeah,
But one last thing before we go, I noticed something in your notes that we haven't touched on. It's about the ethics of all this, like the morality of free will.
you're right. That's a massive part of this conversation. If our actions are already set, does it change what's right and wrong? How do we deal with things like justice and fairness if it's all predetermined?
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really complicated. And I think that's a perfect spot to pause for now. I'm already feeling my brain overload a bit. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll dive into the ethics of this whole free will thing. Stay tuned. And we're back. Okay, so before the break, we were getting into some pretty deep stuff about free will, determinism, and even a little quantum physics thrown in for good measure. We covered a lot, but there's this one huge aspect we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Ethics.
If our actions are already decided, does it really matter if we do good or bad or even responsible? It's a tough one.
I know. It's messing with my head. And our listeners had some really good questions about this, especially about, like, justice and stuff.
Yeah, they brought up a super important point. What if someone commits a crime, but it was like predetermined by their genes or how they grew up? Does it change if they're belty? And should they be punished the same as someone who seemingly made a free choice to do something wrong?
It's like our whole legal system assumes we have a choice. But if determinism is true, does that mean we got to rethink everything? Prisons? Punishment?
Some philosophers say even with determinism, we still need consequences. It's not about revenge or blame, but more about keeping everyone safe. Think about quarantining someone with a contagious disease.
Okay, so we quarantine them not to punish them, but to stop the disease from spreading.
Right.
So even in a deterministic world, maybe we still need laws and prisons, but it's not about saying someone's bad.
Exactly. We'd focus on rehab, making things right, and preventing harm. We wouldn't ask, did you choose to do this bad thing? It'd be more, what led you to this, and how do we stop it from happening again?
That's huge EE. It makes you wonder if our current systems can even handle this whole free will thing. Like, are they built to be fair if we don't have as much choice as we thought?
Totally agree. Our usual way of doing justice, it really leans on individual blame. But if determinism's true, that gets super complicated. It could change everything. How we think about crime, punishment, even forgiving people.
Whoa, this is deep. But let's remember, this isn't just theoretical, right? This stuff impacts how we treat each other, build societies, and even how we see ourselves.
Oh, for sure. And we can't ignore that different cultures and beliefs deal with this in different ways.
Like in some Eastern philosophies, like Buddhism, there's this idea of karma. It's about cause and effect, so it has some overlap with determinism, right? But it's not like a doom and gloom thing.
Totally. In those traditions, understanding how actions and consequences connect is seen as, like, freeing. It's not a limit. It's a way to grow. It's about recognizing that our choices have these ripple effects on us and others, and it encourages acting in a way that makes things better, not worse.
So even when you focus on cause and effect, there's still this emphasis on being good.
Yeah.
Like it's not giving up to fate, but understanding that our actions shape reality.
You got it. It shows that even if we don't totally control where we start in life, we can develop wisdom and compassion in how we react to things.
This is where the free will conversation gets super interesting. It makes us think about what really makes a good life, a meaningful life, even if we're not totally in control.
Exactly. It makes us face some tough stuff about ourselves and the world, but it can lead to deeper understanding, empathy, and hopefully positive change.
Thinking about all this, I wonder about all those everyday choices, big and small. If they're already decided, do they even matter? Do our efforts, our relationships mean less?
That's the heart of what many of our listeners are asking. They're feeling a bit I don't know, maybe conflicted about determinism. Does it take away from our purpose, our sense of meaning?
Yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap. If everything's already decided, why even try? But like we've been saying, it's not so simple.
Even if determinism is true, it doesn't erase what we experience or the value of our relationships. Think about a beautiful piece of music. It's still amazing even if the composer followed rules when they wrote it.
Good point. It didn't just randomly appear. Someone created it, rules or not. So you're saying our lives are like that too?
Exactly. Even if our actions are the result of stuff we can't control, they still have meaning. We can still feel joy, love, all the good stuff. We can still work to make the world better.
I really like that idea. Yeah, there are limits, but within those limits, we can still make things that are beautiful, that matter. It's not ignoring the complexity, it's finding meaning anyway.
And that's where the value of all this philosophy stuff comes in. It's not about finding the one right answer. It's about understanding ourselves and the world better, and hopefully living a life that's more genuine and compassionate.
So as we wrap up part 2, what we've learned is that this whole free will versus determinism thing, it's not just a brain teaser for philosophers. It has real consequences for how we think about justice, responsibility, even what it means to have a good life.
And as always, the most important part is what you take away from it. How does all this resonate with you? What new questions or insights have come up? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll look at some practical ways to handle these big questions in our daily lives, and we'll leave you with some final thoughts to ponder as you continue your own exploration of free will and determinism. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's been quite a journey so far. We've gone deep into free will, determinism, the whole shebang. But as we wrap up, I want to bring it back to you, our listeners. What does all this mean practically for our lives?
Yeah, it's great to ponder these big concepts, but how do we actually use this stuff? How can understanding free will, or maybe not having it, help us make choices?
Yeah.
Live better?
Totally. It's easy to get lost in the big ideas. And you mentioned struggling with how determinism fits with your own goals and dreams. It's a common thing.
It is. People wonder, if our paths are already set, do our efforts even matter? Does it make working towards something pointless if it's, already decided if we'll succeed or not?
I get that. It's a big question.
Yeah.
But I think even if everything is predetermined, it doesn't take away from setting goals, working towards something you care about.
It's even if the end result is already set. The journey still matters, right? The effort, the skills you learn, the people you meet along the way, that stuff has value no matter the outcome.
And often it's that journey, the trying, that teaches us the most. About ourselves, about what matters. We get stronger, discover things about ourselves we didn't know.
Exactly. And even if you don't reach a specific goal, all that work you put in, it can have ripple effects. You might inspire someone, find a new opportunity you never expected, or end up on a path that's way better for you.
I think that's where being okay with uncertainty comes in. Free will or not, life's unpredictable. But instead of freaking out about it, we can see it as a chance to be more present, more flexible, open to whatever comes next.
Love that. It's shifting from, I need this specific result, to, I'm going to enjoy the process. Finding the good stuff along the way, being okay with not knowing, seeing even so-called failures as chances to learn.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
maybe it's about approaching your goals with curiosity and openness, not getting fixated on one outcome. It's about finding meaning in the doing, the trying, wherever it leads.
And it's about being kind to yourself and others. We're all in this crazy thing called life with different backgrounds, different stuff influencing us. Remembering that helps us be more understanding, more empathetic.
So true. It's easy to judge based on results. But if we focus on why people do things, the effort they put in, it changes how we see everything. Ourselves, others, the whole world.
And it loops back to what we said before. Even if determinism is true, it doesn't mean we're off the hook, morally speaking. We might not control all the starting conditions, but we can choose how we react, how we treat people, what kind of person we want to be.
So in a world where maybe everything's predetermined, we can still choose to be kind, to care about others, to live with integrity. We can try to make choices that reflect our values and make things better for ourselves and everyone else.
Exactly. It's more empowering than just saying, fate's gonna fate. It means that even within limits, we still have a say, we can still make a difference.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about denying how complex this all is, but about living with it in a way that's meaningful and, empowering.
And all our deep dives, there's no one right answer. Free will versus determinism, it's a question that's been around forever. But exploring these ideas, thinking about them, it opens us up to new ways of seeing things, new possibilities, and helps us understand ourselves and the world a little better.
And that's what it's all about, right? Giving you, our awesome listeners, the stuff you need to think critically, make your own choices, and maybe even change your mind along the way.
As we wrap up, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep digging. The more you learn about yourself and the world, the better.
We hope this deep dive got you thinking, gave you some new perspectives to play with, and maybe even sparked a little more curiosity about everything. The human mind, the universe, the whole enchilada. It's a wild ride, but we're in it together. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. See you next time.